No one in Brookfield talked about the old house at the end of Raven Street. It wasn't abandoned in the usual way. The windows weren't shattered, the door wasn't broken, the paint hadn't fully peeled away. It simply stood there, watching, like it was waiting for someone to remember it. People passed it every day and felt an unexplainable heaviness in their chest, a pressure behind their eyes, like the house was pressing a finger against their thoughts. Some said the air felt colder near it. Others claimed they heard whispering when they walked past at night. But no one stopped, no one knocked, and no one ever stayed inside for long. Until Daniel moved in. Daniel had never planned to live in Brookfield. He was a freelance writer, broke, exhausted, and desperate for silence. When he found the listing online, large house, low rent, immediate availability, he didn't ask questions. He should have. The landlord, an old man with pale eyes and shaking hands, avoided eye contact when Daniel signed the papers. "You'll be alone," the man said quietly. "That's the point," Daniel replied. The old man hesitated, then added, "If you hear someone calling your name, don't answer." Daniel laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. Night 1. The first night passed quietly. Daniel unpacked his boxes, set up his laptop, and explored the house. It was bigger inside than it looked from outside. Too big. Long hallways stretched farther than expected. Some doors led to empty rooms with bare floors and dusty walls. Others were locked. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Daniel woke up. He didn't know why. No noise, no nightmare, just a sudden awareness. The house was silent, too silent. Even the usual sounds of the night were missing. No wind, no insects. Then he heard it. A whisper. "Daniel." He sat up, heart racing. "Hello?" he called. The whisper stopped. He waited. Nothing. Convincing himself it was a dream, Daniel lay back down. Just as his eyes closed, the whisper returned, closer this time. "Daniel, you're home." He didn't sleep again that night. The writing begins. Over the next few days, Daniel tried to ignore the strange things. Doors that were open suddenly closed. Lights flickered, even though the wiring was new. Mirrors reflected rooms that looked slightly wrong. But the house gave him something he hadn't felt in years. Inspiration. Words poured out of him, stories darker than anything he'd written before. Characters whispered secrets, scenes formed effortlessly in his mind. He wrote for hours without noticing time pass. One evening, while reviewing his work, Daniel noticed something strange. A name appeared in his story, not one he remembered writing. Daniel Harper, his full name. He frowned and scrolled back. The story described a man moving into an old house at the end of Raven Street. His stomach tightened. "This isn't funny," he muttered, assuming exhaustion was messing with him. That night, the whisper returned. "Write faster." The neighbors. Daniel finally met his neighbors a week later. A woman across the street watched him from her porch every morning. Her eyes were hollow, her expression tight with fear. One afternoon, she approached him. "You shouldn't be there," she said immediately. "I signed a lease," Daniel replied. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That house doesn't let people leave, not completely." Daniel laughed it off, but unease crept into his chest. "What do you mean?" he asked. She shook her head. "You learns you." Before he could ask more, she walked away. That night, Daniel dreamed of the house breathing. The locked room. Curiosity eventually led Daniel to the locked door at the end of the longest hallway. The key appeared on his desk one morning. He didn't remember finding it. Inside the room, the air was colder than anywhere else in the house. The walls were covered in names, hundreds of them scratched deeply into the wood. Some were old, some were fresh. At the center of the room stood a mirror. Daniel stepped closer. His reflection smiled. He didn't. The reflection opened its mouth and whispered, "Soon." Daniel ran. The messages. His phone started receiving messages from unknown numbers. Unknown, do you remember the first night? Unknown, you answered when it called. Unknown, now it knows you. Daniel tried to leave the house. His car wouldn't start, the front door wouldn't open, windows refused to break. The house wasn't trapping him violently, it simply refused to let go. The truth. The whisper finally explained. The house was old, older than the town. It fed on presence, on identity. It didn't kill, it kept. Everyone who stayed too long became part of it. Names carved into walls, reflections trapped in mirrors, voices stitched into the walls. Writers were its favorite. They listened, they answered, they gave it words. The final night. At 2:13 a.m., the house went silent again. Daniel stood in front of the mirror. "You can't have me," he said. The reflection smiled wider. "You already gave yourself." The walls whispered his name. The lights went out. The last thing Daniel wrote was a single sentence. "If you're reading this, it already knows your name." Epilogue. Months later, a new listing appeared online. Large house, low rent, immediate availability. A young man clicked the ad. At the end of Raven Street, the house waited, and it whispered softly, "Welcome home."